Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to the Divergent Comics YouTube channel. This year, I'm really focusing on the comic creation aspect of comics. So I really want to highlight a lot of creators this year that I feel inspired from. And the first creator I wanted to really jump on here and introduce you all to, and hopefully get you all to support, is my friend Christopher Rhodes. He is the creator of the comic book 10. It's a really good story that I've been reading recently. But rather than me talk about the story and what I enjoy about it, I'm going to let Chris really just talk about himself a little bit, and then we will do a full interview and let him talk about his project. Chris, how you doing, man?
I'm doing really well. Cool. Thank you a lot, Gary, for having me this morning or this afternoon, I guess now. Always happy to talk about the comics, so I'm looking forward to this a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate you jumping on here and really just indulging me to talk about your projects because I think you have a Kickstarter that is running currently. And by the time this actually drops on YouTube, it will have approximately like maybe 15 or so days left until it ends. So we want to do our best to try to help you get to your goal. So Chris, before we really jump into the project and everything, kind of just tell everyone about yourself and about what got you into making comics.
Yeah, absolutely. So short version, I guess my origin story. So I in my day job, I'm actually an academic. I'm a university lecturer. I
Nice.
live up in Boston now. I grew up in South Carolina, but I came up here for college. Kind of never left the Boston area. You know how it goes.
Okay.
Um, when I'm not, teaching students and everything, which I should be writing my syllabus today, but we'll get to that later. Um, when I'm not doing that, I actually am a nonfiction writer. So I write, academic articles,
Nice.
I write news, like politics kind of commentary. Shout out to Blavity, the website blavity.com. I just published my 400th article this week. It's
Nice.
really ridiculous. Some stuff for Al Jazeera and all that kind of good stuff. And then when I'm not doing all that, I decided to get into comics as a writer.
That's
I
kind of
grew up.
crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the '90s. X-Men, the '90s cartoon is what got me into
Yeah.
comics. And so I always like to tell the story. Back in the day, Pizza Hut, which was like the big hangout spot and all
Right.
everything. They had a promo for the new cartoon where you could get a free comic at Pizza Hut
Oh,
when you
that's
bought one of those
nice.
little personal pan pizzas. And so it was like a 4-issue X-Men series that you could only get at Pizza Hut. And
Uh,
those are my very first comics. And so that got me into reading. And then I went
nice.
and I picked up, the animated series adaptation. Then I picked up like, the regular continuity comics, and I was hooked. And so, I've been a comic book fan, like, now ever since then. But I never thought about, well, that's not true. I had thought about, stories. We all come up with our own
Okay.
story in my head, but, just kind
Right.
of like fun. But it wasn't really until like a couple of years ago, it was 2020.
Hmm.
Everybody was sitting at home, we were locked down, the
Right.
world's falling apart. And so I had a lot of time to start thinking. And I really started thinking to myself, like, imagine like superheroes in this world, like with
Hmm.
the real kind of stuff that we deal with. So,
Right.
yeah, we have muggers, we have like, all those kind of stuff. But we also have to like issues that you maybe can't solve just by punching people really hard, or maybe you could.
Right.
And that's what I started to think about, right? Like, what would be kind of like, that kind of real world take on superheroes. And
Yeah.
I thought about, this premise, like, okay, the world's falling apart, all this crazy stuff. What if one day just a bunch of aliens showed up, like not in
Mm.
secret, not in some farm out in Kansas, but just like appeared like in front of all of us.
Right.
And they give us an offer. They're like, hey,
Hmm.
we have this advanced technology, all this kind of stuff. So we're gonna do you a favor, humanity. Y'all pick 10 people, however you want to, figure it out, give them to us. We'll give them all these powers and give them back to
Okay.
you, and let
Yeah.
them like, solve the world, fix things, all that kind of stuff. And so that was like the premise that I came up with when I was thinking about this. And so, that's how this comic was born. It was the 10. And then, somebody told me like, cut the, kind of like Facebook. And so it just became 10. And
Yeah.
so now you have the story of like these 10 people from around the world who've been given these powers. And now we kind of flash forward. It's been a few years since this has happened. And we kind
Hmm.
of see, what the world is like now with
Hmm.
these super people. And I say super people because, some of them are heroes, some of
Hmm.
them are not so heroic. You can imagine what happens if you gave some of those powers.
Right.
And they've all kind of done different things with it. And the world itself is kind of changed in response to them as well. You can kind of imagine like
Yeah.
if we had people like the way people would respond to that, the way countries would respond to that. And so that's kind of the big setup. And, kind of now we're a few issues in, and each issue is kind of peeking in on a different one of these people and to kind
Hmm.
of see, what's their story, you know, what have they done in like their own part of the world, their own,
Right.
purview, and what has the response been, positive, negative, so on and so forth. And so that's 10.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that premise, especially just the fact of you're taking. I think the thing that really drew me into it was the fact that you're taking the world and you're putting it in a situation where something that probably could never happen, but you're adding a spin to it that really draws people in. Because if an alien race comes and says, "Yeah, we want 10 people, we'll give them powers," and it's just like, okay, how are we going to choose that? And the very first issue of 10 really dives into that, and I thought that part really sold me on the story. Um, but when it comes to you creating comics and just going through that whole process, like what was the biggest influence for you to really just take that dive and say, you know what, I'm going to start writing comics and I want to create them?
Oh, the biggest influence. Wow. Like I said, I had this moment when I had a bunch of free time on my hand. I'd always kind of wanted to do some fiction writing.
Hmm.
You can search my computer and you'll find pages of, novels that I got a couple pages into, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, maybe later. But it really I got sucked back into like, my first big love, right? Like I grew up
Hmm.
with these cartoons, I grew up with these comics, I grew up with X-Men and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, why not go for it? Why not go for the thing that I'm passionate about, right? I've been
Right.
watching the MCU, back in the day during that time. The first Spider-Verse movie was kind of on repeat.
Hmm.
Me and my son watching it and everything. And so it's like, why not just go for it?
Yeah.
And once I kind of started to dive into it, all the influences start to spill out. So, there's X-Men mixed up in there, there's Avengers mixed up in there, there's all this kind of stuff, Justice League. There's some of the newer stuff, right? Like, like I've seen some of the boys. Like I haven't watched too much of it because I don't want to like accidentally like pick too much stuff up and put it in
Right.
there. But some of that premise or like Invincible or
Hmm.
Injustice, kind of these more modern, a little bit more kind of gritty takes on heroes. And I really want something that's kind of in between that kind of,
Hmm.
hits on some of that stuff, like, but it's not too cynical, right? Like it's still
Right.
superheroes at the end of the day. And so finding that kind of nice spot in the middle was really the thing. And then like for each character, like I try to like wear my influence on my sleeve. Each character is really like a buildup of a bunch of different people and a bunch of different
Hmm.
situations and stuff. You mentioned that first issue. Your first issue is always special.
Yeah,
Um,
it is.
and so, for people who haven't read it yet, the first issue checks in on the American superhero of this group. He's a black guy. His name is Brian Johnson. He, the Navy vet. And so you can imagine, like, if America gets superpowers, they want somebody like, in the structure already. So,
Right.
finding, a veteran, giving them powers. And now he's the peacekeeper, is his superhero name. And there's this really interesting kind of twist on it, where it's like, he's going around the world fighting for America and all this kind of stuff, but he can't be a superhero at home. Like, and then this whole like thing, like he's banned in America, even though he's
Yeah.
fighting for the country. And that's like, that's a lot of American history, right?
Yep.
Like, that's like, black soldiers going and fighting in World War II or Vietnam and then coming back and having racism.
Right.
That's Barack Obama, like,
Hmm.
being celebrated on the world stage and winning Nobel Peace Prizes, and then like
Right.
people yelling at him at home. Like it's all that kind of stuff. It's Blue Marvel, the Marvel comic character,
Yes.
right? It's like, oh, the secret black hero that like, his mask gets taken off and then like he has to retire. It's all that kind of sorry, spoilers for people who haven't read that. It's all that kind of stuff like mixed into one, right? And I'm doing kind of the same thing each time I introduce a new hero, right? Like it's
Hmm.
a bunch of these different characters, a bunch of these different traits and tropes, kind of all blended into something new. I don't claim that I'm, making up the superhero genre, right? Like,
Hmm.
but I'm trying to do some new twists on it, and try to do some new spins on, okay, we know what this kind of character is like,
Hmm.
but how would they operate in, 2024 in our actual world? Like, how would we treat a black Superman? It'd be kind of
Yeah,
interesting.
that is
Um,
interesting.
and what kind of responsibility would that character feel, right? Like,
Right.
not just to go and, fight terrorists and bad guys and stuff, but back
Hmm.
home, right? He's looking at the stuff that's happening back in America, and he's, been sidelined. It's like, how long can that last before, he feels compelled to start doing stuff here? And, what that back and forth is going to be like. Um, and I say all that. I also mentioned I'm a political scientist in my day job, my academics, right? So I love the politics of
Yeah.
superheroes. Um, and so I figured out, if you're going to talk about it, just talk about it. Just go full force.
Hmm.
Um, but I also like, people who can fly and punch really hard and shoot lasers out of their
Right.
hands. And so the goal when I was doing this was to create a book where, if you don't care about the politics or the social commentary, if you just want like the old kind of old school superheroes, you get
Hmm.
that. You get an adventure, you get action, you get all this kind of stuff.
Hmm.
And you can read that and, I mean, you can tell me, but hopefully, that's a satisfying read. You get everything that you want to. But if you also want some of that other stuff, then that's also there. It's
Hmm.
not taking away from the heroics or the action, but
Hmm.
it's definitely kind of weaved into that. And so if you want something that feels a bit more relevant for our time, then you
Yeah.
also get that. If I'm asking somebody to spend, $5 on a PDF or, 15 on a paper copy, like the Kickstarter, y'all, I want to give you your money's worth.
Right.
If you're gonna, spend this on me instead of a movie ticket or, a cup of coffee at Starbucks, I want you to be worth your while. And so I want to give
Right.
something that you can read it the first time and it's like, okay, that was a cool adventure. And I can read it the second time and it's like, oh wait, this is saying a lot about our history. This is saying a lot about, you know, our current social situation. I want you to read it a third time and be like, oh wait, it's setting up a bunch of other stuff I didn't see the first time. Like, it's dropping all these little hints of things that are gonna come later or building up this world and what that looks like. And so, by that time it's like, okay, I feel like you got your money's worth. I feel like, you've gotten something that I feel comfortable, taking your $5, taking your $15, because you can read this, over and over and you get something new out of it.
Yeah.
So that's the goal.
Yeah. I love books that have that rereadability. Um, and I can definitely say that 10 has that rereadability, especially like you mentioned, just the mindset of going into a book and knowing that you're going to not only get something entertaining and has really good artwork, but you're going to get a story that actually speaks volumes. I'm one of those people that, I don't like to just have the fluff. Those type of things are good to read, whenever you're bored. But if you have the opportunity to like tell a story or to speak volumes to an actual issue or to something that people actually deal with, I feel like that resonates more. And I'm glad that 10 does that, and I can see that in the pages each time I read it. Whether it be talking about, like you mentioned with Brian Johnson, him having to deal with the fact that he can go out and save someone in China, or he can go help someone in Germany, but he can't save a little old lady crossing the street in America because he's a black man. So that is actually one of the best parts of the book for me. And again, I've loved reading this story so far. 1 and 2 have been really good, and I'm looking forward to 3 so much.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Um, and sorry, one thing I want to say, you mentioned the art too, and so I just want to give a huge shout out. I've
Yeah,
been working with
yeah,
some amazing artists on this book, and that's been like, one of my favorite parts. We write these words on, your computer and whatnot, but then getting that art back, and it's like, oh wow, like look at what you did
yeah.
with this. So shout out to Marcos Lima, our penciler at Anchor. And she did a lot of colors as well.
Hmm.
He's an amazing artist. He's in Brazil, so we hooked up online, and he's just knocked it out of the park, like every issue.
Hmm.
I just love, looking at the pages. Buddy Bodwin does the letters. I've learned so much just from him. He's such a professional, such a nice guy. Like he's schooled me a lot on, comic book writing, script writing. It's like, hey, I can't fit all this on one page. You got to edit it out. You got to cut it down.
Yeah.
And placing artwork, like all that kind of stuff. The cover artist is really great. Whether it's Marcos doing the covers, whether it's Lane Lloyd who did the variant for issue 1, Marcus Jimenez for issue 2, Sim Art, who's an artist out of Vietnam, and did the variant for this new issue. Nicholas Mueller as well. Shout out to Nicholas Mueller, who did a variant cover for it as well. All of these people are just like so incredibly talented, and just working with them has been like one of the most fun things about this whole process.
Yeah, that's honestly amazing to hear, because I've heard a lot of people have some bad experiences with some artists, but I feel like there's more good ones than there are bad ones. It's just the good ones don't get talked about as much. So I'm glad definitely to hear that you have had some really good experiences with the ones that you've worked with.
No doubt.
So kind of jumping to my next question, to me 10 feels like an action adventure type of superhero comic, and that's a really good genre. That's one of my favorite genres to not only write in, but also to read as well. And then I love like watching movies in that genre also. So outside of the action adventure genre, what type of genres do you enjoy to read and watch?
Oh, that's a great question. So yeah, like I said, first and foremost, I'm a big superhero fan. So I've seen all the MCU movies, just about all the DC ones as well. I'm looking forward to the reboot. But I like a lot of stuff. I like fantasy and that kind of stuff. I'm halfway through Game of Thrones right now. It's kind of intense, so I have to take it in, a step at a time. And those kind of things. I like Star Wars. Nice. I feel like I'm the only casual Star Wars fan, because Star Wars fans are intense. And I'm one of these people that's it's guys with laser swords. That's cool.
Right.
And so so I enjoyed that. If you look at the 10 logo for the comic, it's a mix, in my mind at least, between the X-Men logo from the 90s and the Star Wars logo from the movies. So
never picked up on that.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's how the Star Wars logo, it recedes into the background at the beginning and that kind of stuff. That was the idea for that. And so
oh yeah, I like that. Yeah.
And then I like sci-fi in general, even if it's not action sci-fi. I grew up again with X-Files, and so the whole aliens kind of subplot was a little bit, that was kind of in the back of my mind. Or I was just telling my oldest daughter about the movie. What's the movie? Arrival.
Oh yeah, that's a good
years ago. That was one of my favorite sci-fi movies recently. And so basically anything that has a good story or some good action, or hopefully both, I'm game for.
Nice.
Yeah, and catch me on a different day, and I might have a different favorite.
No, I get you on that. Arrival, I recently watched that for the first time and absolutely loved it. I'm not the biggest fan of Amy Adams, but she was absolutely phenomenal in that movie. And the story behind it was absolutely amazing. So I'm glad that you enjoyed that one as well. So we've kind of teased it. We kind of talked about it a little bit, but 10 is releasing its third issue. You're running a Kickstarter for it. So kind of tell us about the Kickstarter, what your goals are for it, and what you expect, or what people can expect to receive when backing that Kickstarter.
Yeah, absolutely. So this Kickstarter's been going really well. We're about a week and a half into it. We've already crossed the $1,000 mark. We got 51 backers last I checked. Kickstarter gave us a Project We Love tag, so I was super excited about that. So some people apparently like what we're doing. So we definitely want to push that strong, hit the 1,500 mark, which is our goal, maybe even get some stretch goals going there. So everyone obviously go check that out. It's 10 number 1 through 3. And this new issue I'm super excited about. This book, has jumped around the world. You had the American hero. The second issue was in Brazil. The third one is in Japan now. So we're going to Tokyo. And this new hero, and I put hero kind of in quotation marks, is this vigilante. He's called the Purifier. He has this really cool costume. If you've ever seen kendo, the Japanese fencing, it's a take off that. So he has the mask, he has the sword, all this kind of stuff. And he's going around he's fighting criminals. He has a sword. He has this pair of sickles, and so he's not kind of
That's
like a
exciting.
no, yeah, he's kind of like a no, no take no prisoners kind of guy.
Okay.
Um, the way I think about him is that there's a little bit of Daredevil, a little bit of Punisher in that character.
Okay.
Um, a little bit of Rorschach from Watchmen.
Okay. Okay.
A little bit of Deadpool, right? He's like he got some humor to him. He's cracking some jokes, kind of thing. But
Okay.
it's also one of those things where like you're looking at him and it's like we don't quite know what to deal with this guy.
Hmm.
Is he a hero? Is he cleaning up the streets? Is he something else? Is he like a guy who's running around with a sword, like
Right.
taking people out? And he hits up a bunch of stuff. There's a this is gonna be an action like packed issue. Um,
Okay.
the way I describe it is like if you like the hallway fight scenes in Daredevil, or if you like the Raid, those movies, like
Oh,
you're gonna like this issue. Like
you got me
those are the
sold.
kind of that's what I'm going for here.
Okay.
Um, there's another character you see on the cover. There's this female assassin. She has her own kind of backstory.
Okay.
Interplay between the two of them is kind of interesting. Like we play with some stuff about like the perspectives and the issue
Right.
between the two of them. And so like I think it's the first issue where I had like kind of it's almost kind of like two leading characters at the same time, like going back and forth.
Okay.
And that's really exciting. And yeah, and you got superpowers and swords and lasers and all this kind of crazy stuff that you can kind of only do in comics. And
Yeah.
so this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a fun issue.
It sounds like the best issue of 10 so far.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, I know it's like a cliche, but I people ask me what's my favorite character. It's whichever one I'm writing right now. Like every time I'm developing a new character, like
Yeah.
figuring out how they think, like coming up with like what's their cool moment to really like define them, and it's just like dang. And
Right.
like I mean, hopefully I'm getting better with the writing. Like the art has just been like phenomenal throughout. And Marcos et al. Just keep doing new things every time. Like I throw something at them, it's like dang, I didn't even think this could look like that. Um, so yeah, so it's gonna be good. So I really like, I'm confident telling people like, go buy this. You're
Yeah.
gonna get your money's worth. Like you're gonna be happy that you got this book. Um, you know, I write books that I want to read.
Right.
And so I want to read this book. I want to see the final product. And I think other people will too.
That's exciting, man. I'm thoroughly looking forward to reading 10 number 3 because if it's anything like what you just described and even just half of what happened in 10 1 and 2, then this is going to be a phenomenal book. So I look forward to it. Everyone watching, the link to the Kickstarter will be in the description below, so definitely click on that. Let's back this and get it over goal and reach every stretch goal that comes out because I want to see this succeed.
Much
So final
appreciated.
thing before we close this out, how many issues of 10 are there going to be, and then do you have anything planned after 10?
Oh, those are very good questions. So to answer the second question first, like, 10 is my baby. I mean, I have actual kids, but my fictional baby. And so like, I would love to write for Marvel. I grew up on Marvel. That was what got me into comics. There's a doc on my computer of like ideas I have for Marvel stories.
Okay.
I have a Spider-Man, like a crazy Spider-Man story I want to tell one day. Like, I have a Doctor Strange story. That's not even like the character I like, but I have like one story I want to tell with him. In Avengers, like the whole nine. So Marvel, if y'all listening, I'm available. And so but whenever down the road, for 10 itself, like going with the theme, I want us to go 100 issues.
Mm,
One because it's
I
like
like it.
10 tens, and I feel like you got to do that symmetry. But there's
Right.
there's a bunch of stuff planned. Like
Nice.
you're just getting started. Like we're introducing the characters. Like you're getting to know these people. Like when we start to see them interacting with each other, and we start to see the larger world that like surrounds them. When we start to figure out like why did they get these powers in the first place? Like there's a whole bunch of stuff planned in there, and it's like, and I feel like again, I mean, it's ambitious, but if we're gonna go for it, go for it.
Right.
I feel like there's a 100 issue arc here. But the thing I'll say to anyone who's like, is like, maybe I don't want to commit. One of my things about writing this is that every issue is a full story.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you jump in on issue number 2 or issue number 3, if you jump in on issue number 57 down the road, you'll get a full story just from that issue.
Mm-hmm.
But if you stick with us, you'll get like, this epic with all this stuff. And so 100 issues, that's the plan. Check in with me, Lord willing, a few years down the road, see if we are closer to that goal.
I love it, honestly. I run Divergent Comics, and my goal is to, have a complete beginning, middle, and end with my story. So to hear you say, 100 issues, that's the goal, and that's where you're aiming for. I love to see that, because that shows that you have a plan. And, if you had 200 issues for 10, I'll read all 200, because I really love this world, and I love everything that you're doing so far. So definitely keep going, and I look forward to seeing what else you come up with for 10.
Absolutely. And likewise, I'm waiting for your next issue to drop. Hit me up whenever the Kickstarter or the crowdfunding campaign launches.
Definitely, I'll definitely let you know, and I appreciate that as well. So thank you for jumping on here and just doing this short little interview with me. It's been a fun time, Chris. It really is peel the layers back, hopefully, for people to look at and see, the life of a creator, and kind of get to know you a little bit better. So
I much appreciate it.
Yeah, everyone, like I said, go back 10 on Kickstarter. First 3 issues will be included in that Kickstarter, and you can get to see the amazing story that I've read so far. So definitely go do that. Chris, thank you again for jumping on here, and everyone, y'all have a good one.
Thank you so much.